The woman in 20FF never spoke, but the building was trying to say something. Reddit horror story. There's something you should know before I tell you what happened in apartment 20F. Something I've never told anyone. Not my partner, not the neighbors, not even the police when they came knocking with flashlights and questions. The truth is, I used to watch her. I used to lean against my doorframe, pretending to check the mail or lock up, just so I could catch a glimpse of her stepping into or out of that pale blue door at the end of the hallway. It wasn't that she was beautiful, not in the traditional sense. She was plain, really. Short hair cut with precision, not flair. Clothes that always looked one size too large. Lips rarely painted, eyes never adorned. But it was the silence around her that drew me in like a tide, a vacuum in an otherwise noisy building. You know how apartment buildings like ours breathe with life. Shouting children, slamming doors, dogs yapping, TVs blasting, late-night game shows through thin walls. But her apartment, dead quiet. Always. Even when you passed her door at the most active hour, there was no sound, no music, no TV, not even the click of her heels. And yet every light inside would be on. That's what got to me first. She kept every single light burning like she was afraid of shadows. I never understood that, but I never asked either. Not until it was too late. You see, buildings like ours keep secrets like plague in a clogged artery. They don't announce when they're about to collapse. They whisper. They settle. They creak under truths too old to name. And she was the whisper behind every creak. When I moved into 2E, the unit next to hers, the landlord had said I was lucky. Quiet floor, he said. Mostly older tenants. One woman next door's been there 20 years. Keeps to herself. He handed me the keys like he was doing me a favor, like he wasn't offloading a curse. I didn't believe in curses back then. I believed in rent control, working from home, and the perfect Sunday routine. But curses don't care if you believe in them. They only care that you notice. And I noticed her the first night I moved in, standing at her peephole. I hadn't even finished dragging in my final box of books when I felt eyes. You ever feel that? That invisible throb at the back of your neck that says someone's watching, not out of curiosity but necessity. That's what it was like. I turned and saw her silhouette, lit just barely from behind through the frosted peephole glass. She didn't flinch when I met her gaze through the door. Didn't duck. Didn't blink. Just stood there. Watching, like she was taking inventory. I unpacked fast after that, trying to shake the chill. I told myself she was just cautious. Maybe she'd been robbed once. Maybe she was just one of those people who liked to know who came and went. The kind who remembered license plates and groceries. The kind who cleaned their hallway doormat weekly. But no matter how much I rationalized, I couldn't shake the way her doorframe always felt a little colder. A little off. I didn't hear her for weeks. Not a single sound, but things started to change in small ways. My phone would buzz with numbers I didn't recognize. No caller ID, always 3 rings, then gone. My mail would arrive open, resealed, clumsily. Once, my toothpaste was already squeezed near the end, even though I'd just bought it. Small things, explainable things. But still, I mentioned it offhand to an older neighbor down the hall, a wary man named Hector who fed the pigeons on the roof every morning. He only blinked and said, that apartment's always been like that. Don't let it in. He didn't elaborate, just tossed crumbs like his words were already bait enough. I laughed it off at the time. People in buildings like ours like their myths, their little ghost stories to pass time. But then I started seeing the notes. They weren't long, just 4 or 5 words, scribbled in what looked like smudged graphite. They'd be slipped under my door sometime between 200 and 400 a.m., always when I was asleep. I'd wake up to one lying face, up like a message from a fortune cookie you never broke. Don't eat what she offers. Leave the closet closed. Count the steps when it's dark. At first, I thought it was a prank. Maybe Hector had a twisted sense of humor. Maybe it was some kid on the floor above, but the paper was always damp. The writing faded around the edges. And once, I swear it was warm, like it had been pressed against someone's skin. I didn't sleep well after that. I'd wake to creaks not in my own unit but inside the walls. Tapping that moved, not like mice, but like knuckles. Not random, but purposeful. 1, 2, 2, 3, 1. Then silence. I started counting them in my dreams. Started hearing them even when I was awake. I installed a camera facing the hallway. Nothing, not a thing. But when I'd review the footage, there were gaps. 3-second blackouts. Each time. Just a blur of static before the feed returned. But in every single clip, just after the static, there'd be a single frame of her door slightly open. Just one frame. Never enough to prove anything. I tried confronting her once. I rehearsed it all morning. What I'd say, how I'd say it. I told myself she deserved to be told off for the notes, for the intrusions. I knocked on her door at noon, the only time I thought I'd catch her. And she opened it before I could even pull my hand away. She stood there, wearing a gray robe, hair damp like she'd just stepped out of the shower, but there was no sound of running water inside. No steam. No humidity. She looked at me without blinking, and I forgot everything I was going to say. Her eyes were wrong. They were too still. No life, like someone had replaced her pupils with polished obsidian. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice soft, nearly childlike. But behind her, I saw it. Not the apartment, not really. Just light. Endless light. A blank hallway where a living room should have been. And it was humming. That's the only way I can describe it. Like fluorescent lights and something else. Like bees trapped behind your teeth. I stammered something about the wrong mail. She nodded once and gently closed the door. That was it. But from then on, things escalated. My mirror cracked in the middle of the night. My plants began to rot even though I watered them religiously. The air inside my unit grew heavy, thick like old soup, and every night, around 3:13 a.m., I'd hear a soft knock from inside my closet. I taped it shut. The knocking continued. I put a chair against it. The chair moved. I left my apartment for a weekend, hoping distance would clear my head. When I returned, the closet door was wide open and my carpet soaked through as if something had leaked, except nothing in the apartment was damaged or broken. Nothing but handprints. Faint grayish, faint, chelled, sized. I didn't call the police. What would I say? "Excuse me, officer, my neighbor is a ghost and my closet breathes." But I did what I thought would help. I left a note under her door. Just 5 words, same as she used. "Please stop. I know everything." I didn't expect an answer. I didn't expect a knock at my door an hour later, either. But there it was. Slow, even, knuckles against wood. 1, 2, 3. I didn't open it. I watched through the peephole. She was standing there, of course. Still, eyes forward. But she wasn't alone. Behind her, just out of frame, something moved. Crawling. A shape made of shadow and flicker. Too tall to be human. Too long in the arms. It reached for her shoulder, but she didn't move. Just turned slowly and walked back into her apartment. The door shut, and the hallway was empty again. The next morning, her apartment door was wide open. But the inside was gone. Not empty. Gone, like a mouth torn out of the building. Just drywall wires, concrete, no furniture, no carpet, no windows. Just space where a unit had once been. The landlord swore she'd never lived there, said Twin F had been under renovation for months. Showed me the work order. I showed him the footage. There was no footage, just static. 30 days of nothing. But I remember her. I remember what she said when she looked at me that day, eyes like obsidian, voice like a whisper through glass. I remember the last thing she mouthed when she turned away. "No, you'll hear them too." And I do. Every night. The knocks, the hum. The notes that still slide under my door. Only now, they're written in my handwriting. I tried leaving. Packed a bag, called a friend across town, made up a story about a plumbing issue, and left before nightfall. The building looked different in the daylight, less haunted, more mundane. Cracks in the stucco, a broken intercom speaker, cigarette butts by the entrance. Nothing unusual, but even as I walked away, I could feel its presence like a tug on a line I hadn't realized was wrapped around my ribs. I didn't look back, not once. Not when the elevator doors hesitated to close. Not when I passed the mailboxes and noticed mine swinging open despite locking it earlier. I kept walking. The world outside was loud and messy and full of other people's lives. Honking cars, barking dogs, kids with backpacks hitting each other with sticks. It was a relief. Until I got to my friend's place and saw it. It was subtle at first. A hairline crack in the corner of the ceiling, identical to the one above my bed. The same type of creaking in the walls at night. A faint but unmistakable scent, like mildew and burnt toast. I told myself it was coincidence, stress. My mind playing tricks on me after everything in that building. But the signs piled up fast. My phone still glitched at 3:13 a.m. 3 calls, no number, no message. My bag, carefully packed before I left, now had a note tucked inside. Damp, smudged, still warm. Running doesn't work. I didn't tell my friend. How could I? She'd think I was unraveling. Maybe I was. I stared at the closet in her spare room all night, waiting for a knock that never came. And yet I didn't sleep. I returned home after 2 nights. I had no choice. It was like the world outside had shrunk, contracted to the same shape as apartment 2E. Everywhere else felt blurry off, and the building welcomed me back without protest. No groans, no flickering lights. My door opened smoothly, almost eagerly. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it, except the closet. It was sealed shut, not by tape or a chair or any physical means. But the door wouldn't budge. It wasn't stuck, it was resisting. Like a breath held behind wood. I didn't try to force it. Instead, I focused on routine. Wake up, shower, eat, pretend nothing was wrong. I began keeping a journal, just small observations, nothing dramatic. Mail still tampered with. Heard humming behind wall. Neber's apartment still missing. Writing it down helped, a little. It made it feel less imaginary. But then the entries began changing. I'd wake up and find new lines in my handwriting. Sentences I didn't remember writing. The floorboards are listening. She was never alone. Your face has changed. And one that made me drop the pen entirely. You should never have opened the door. Except I hadn't. Not that one. Not the closet. Not since the day it refused to open. But that night, after reading that line, I found the closet slightly ajar. Just an inch. Just enough to see the darkness inside. I closed it gently and didn't sleep again for 3 days. I started watching the hallway through my peephole constantly. At first, I'd just check in the mornings and evenings. Then every hour. Then every few minutes. It became a compulsion. A need. Because sometimes, just some catch it, a flicker, a shimmer, like heat rising off pavement. The air near 20F would bend, like something was moving through space that didn't want to be seen. And once, I saw the woman again. Only not quite. She looked like her. The same shape, same walk, same blank stare, but her feet didn't touch the floor. She floated a millimeter above it, and her mouth didn't move, but I could hear her humming. The tune I'd first heard months ago. Soft, cyclical, never-ending. I pressed my ear to the door, and the humming grew louder, as though she were on the other side, waiting. I backed away, heart racing, and hid in the bathroom for an hour. It got worse. One night, I woke up to my door wide open. Not unlocked. Knocked. Not cracked. Wide. Open. And the hallway beyond wasn't my hallway. The walls were the wrong color. The light bulbs were flickering blue, not yellow. There were doors, dozens of them. None of them numbered, all slightly open. And from each came a sound, a whisper, a knock, a laugh, a scream. I stepped backward, slowly reached for the door handle, and when I blinked, it was shut. I was in bed, my heart hammering, my sheets damp with sweat. I checked the hallway on my camera, just static. But at 3:13 a.m., one frame showed something new. My door opening on its own, and her standing inside, back turned, head tilted, as if listening to something only she could hear. I stopped checking the footage after that. What was the point? Then I got the package. No return address, no markings, just a plain, white box, inside of a single key. Old, brass, ornate. Too heavy to be modern, no explanation. Just a scrap of paper beneath it that read, "It's time." I knew immediately what it was for. The closet. Of course. What else? I didn't use it. Not that day, not the next. I kept it in my pocket like a curse, like a weight dragging me down. I tried getting rid of it. Tossed it into the gutter outside. But the next morning, it was back on my kitchen counter, wet and glinting in the sunlight like it had crawled its way home. I tried calling the landlord again. Disconnected. I checked the lease. The building wasn't listed. My address didn't exist on any map app. I asked neighbors. They looked at me with polite confusion. "You mean the old building on Blythe?" One woman said. "That got demolished years ago. Nothing's there now but an empty lot." I walked outside that night, trembling, heart in my throat. Made my way down the stairs, out the front door, onto the street. And there it was. A construction fence. Property condemned. Rusty chain across the gate. Weeds growing through the cracks. I turned around. My building was gone. I stood there for maybe an hour, trying to make sense of it. Cars passed. A couple walked their dog. No one looked at me. No one saw me. I tried calling my friend again. Voicemail. I tried hailing a cab. Nothing stopped. My shadow looked wrong in the streetlight. Too tall, too thin. And it moved when I didn't. I went back to where the door should have been. Touched the brick wall. Cold. Solid. I turned to walk away, and found myself back inside my apartment. No transition. No door. Just a blink, and I was standing in my living room holding the brass key, and the closet was open. Not wide. Just enough. There was a hallway behind it. A long, narrow corridor lined with mirrors. My own reflection dozens of times over. Each one slightly off. One blinked when I didn't. Another smiled. A third whispered something I couldn't hear. The air was cold. Damp. The kind of chill you feel in basements or graveyards. I should have run. But I walked in. The moment I crossed the threshold, I felt it. A shift, like the building had inhaled. The floor beneath me felt soft. Too soft. The mirrors pulsed. I walked slowly, my footsteps echoing in ways that didn't make sense. One reflection followed me out of sync. Another turned and walked the opposite way. Then the hallway ended. A single door stood there, pale blue, identical to the one from apartment 20F. No knob, just a keyhole. I reached for the key in my pocket. My hand shook, my fingers felt longer than they should. I slid the key in. It turned on its own. The door swung open and behind it, not a room, an apartment, but a stairwell, leading down. I looked behind me. Nothing. No mirrors, no hallway, no way back. I descended. Each step was softer than the last. The air grew denser. I began to hear things. My own voice whispering in my ear, but saying things I'd never said. Memories I didn't remember. Names I'd never heard. I passed doors, each one marked with a different unit number from the building. Some I recognized, others I didn't. One was labeled 2E mine. I paused. From behind the door, I heard someone crying, my voice, then laughing, then silence. I didn't open it. I kept going. At the bottom, I found a room, lit only by a single flickering bulb. In the center, a chair, facing away, and her, the woman from 20F sitting, still. She didn't move as I entered, just sat, waiting, her hands folded neatly in her lap. I stepped closer. Her skin was gray, her eyes closed, mouth soon shut. But then she opened her eyes, and I finally understood it wasn't her. It never was. It was the building. And it wanted me to take her place. I couldn't scream. I don't mean I didn't want to. My body physically wouldn't allow it. The air in that room was syrup thick, pressing against my chest, clinging to the inside of my throat like gauze soaked in glue. Every breath I took tasted like metal and wet earth. The woman, or the thing that looked like her, sat motionless in that chair, but her eyes were wide open now, and they weren't looking at me. They were looking through me, past me, beyond me, like I was just a passing shadow in a space meant for something else entirely. And maybe I was. Maybe I was just another placeholder for whatever the building needed next. I tried to step back, but the floor seemed to curve slightly upwards, holding me in place like the lip of a bowl. Gravity was a joke here, a suggestion, not a rule. I glanced behind me, hoping, praying. The stairwell would still be there, but the wall had sealed over. Not like a door closing, like skin healing. Smooth, seamless concrete where the way back had once been. I was trapped, and I knew with a cold, marrow, deep certainty that nothing about this place obeyed time or structure anymore. I could be here for minutes or years, and the difference would be meaningless. Still, I had to try something, anything. My eyes darted around the room. There were no windows, no vents. The only light came from the bulb hanging directly above the chair, swinging slightly even though there was no breeze. I took a hesitant step forward, my feet sinking a millimeter into the spongy floor. The bulb buzzed louder as I approached, flickering like a heartbeat. The woman in the chair blinked, just once. Slowly, I reached out, not toward her but toward the edge of the room, hoping to find a crack in the wall, some hidden seam or passage. And then she spoke, except she didn't. Her lips never moved. The voice came from inside me. Not in my head, inside me, like my ribs had turned into speakers. "You opened the door," the voice said. "No, you are the key." I stumbled backward, slamming into the soft wall, and it gave way slightly, absorbing the impact like memory foam. The chair scraped as she shifted. Her limbs didn't move like they should. Her joints bent just a few degrees too far, her elbows angling with a subtle pop, as though her bones were made for something else entirely. She rose without effort, floating slightly above the floor the same way I'd seen her before in the hallway. I didn't open anything. I whispered aloud, though I knew it was a lie. The closet, the hallway, the key. I had followed every breadcrumb the building had laid out, voluntarily, maybe not knowingly but willingly. The bulb above her sparked violently, then went out. The room was plunged into darkness, and I was swallowed by a silence so complete it screamed. I could hear my own blood, my own breath echoing against bone. Then, click, a soft, wet sound like lips parting. Her voice returned, but now it filled the room like fog seeping from the walls. "You let us in. You us. Not me. Us." That's when I realized she wasn't alone. She never had been. The walls began to breathe. Not figuratively. Litter hail. Exhale. The concrete pulsed outward, then sucked inward like lungs hidden behind plaster. I pressed my back into a corner, trying to shrink myself smaller, but there was no escape. Shapes began to form in the gloom. Not bodies. Not exactly. Impressions. Silhouettes trapped behind the walls, pushing out as though trying to birth themselves through the barrier. And then came the whispers. They weren't speaking to me. They were remembering me. Repeating fragments of my own voice. Things I'd said months ago, weeks ago. Mundane phrases. "Do you have the time?" Twisted into strange inflections. Echoes of me laughing, but distorted, stretched like magnetic tape gone slack. They were replaying my life, piece by piece, and I realized something horrifying: the building hadn't just been observing me. It had been recording me, feeding on me, reconstructing me. The woman floated closer, her eyes wide and glassy. I could see veins beneath her skin now, too many and branching in impossible directions. She reached out her hand, and instinctively I flinched. But she didn't touch me. Her hand hovered inches from my chest, fingers trembling. Her voice, now soft and crumbling like old paper, said, "We need Shape. You remember Shape?" "Ah, what are you?" I finally asked, my own voice so thin it barely existed. "We are what remains," she replied. "The building is our spine. You are the breath we lost." I didn't understand, but I didn't need to, because then the floor split open beneath me. There was no impact, no falling, just an instant shift, like reality slid sideways and I was elsewhere. A new room. Smaller, darker. The same chair now faced me, but it was empty. A mirror hung on the opposite wall, cracked, old. And in the reflection, I wasn't there. Instead, I saw her, the woman from 20F, but younger. Liv. Human. She was standing in a hallway I didn't recognize, speaking to someone I couldn't see. Laughing, crying, living. The mirror played her memories like film on a loop. Each time she blinked, a different decade. Each smile led to a scream. I watched her age, decay, disappear. Then the reflection shifted again, and I saw myself. But not as I was, as I could become. I was standing in my apartment, but the windows were bricked over. My skin was pale, eyes sunken, voice echoing hollowly down the hallway as I watched through my own peephole, mimicking the exact actions I'd once condemned. I had become the watcher, the observer, the bait. The building didn't eat its tenants. It digested them, broke them down into memory, into signal, into function. That's what 20F had been. A piece of the machine, a cog in the structure. And now I was next. I turned from the mirror, clutching my head, desperate to scream, but my mouth wouldn't move. My voice was gone, stolen, repurposed. I fell to my knees, and from the walls came static. Actual static, like a detuned radio. Words formed fragmented. Occupant accepted. Integration pending. Return to unit. Lion then light. Not warm light, not freedom. A familiar. Numbered doors. The smell of old paint and carpet glue. I was back, standing in front of my door, 2E. The key was in my hand, but it was different now. No longer brass, it pulsed. It breathed. I turned it in the lock, trembling. Inside, the apartment was pristine, freshly painted. New fixtures. The closet was gone. In its place, a smooth wall with no seam. My furniture returned, neatly arranged, everything perfect. Except the silence. The air was hollow. Too still. I walked slowly to the window, looked outside. The world was there, but wrong. The street ran in a loop. The same woman walked her dog every 30 seconds. A man pushed the same cart endlessly. The sky had no clouds. Just a blank blue dome. A simulation. I wasn't in the real world anymore. I was inside the building now. Inside whatever version of it had copied me, consumed me. And worst of all, I didn't care. I sat down in the chair, the same chair from that room, and waited. At 3:13 a.m., the peephole shimmered. A new tenant entered the hallway, young, curious. I leaned toward the door, peering out silently. The cycle had begun again, and behind me, a closet door I didn't remember having clicked open. I stopped marking the days. Time doesn't behave properly in here, not in this version of the apartment. It mimics reality just well enough to seduce you into believing, but things slip, subtle things. The radio plays the same newscast every morning, word for word. The neighbors' footsteps echo with the same rhythm each day, like a recording on loop. The sun outside never moves. And if I stare at the digital clock on the microwave long enough, I can catch it blink backward. A kind of dream logic governs this place. Internally consistent, but deeply wrong. Yet I adapt. Because that's what the building wants. Because it's easier to accept the illusion than claw at the walls. I've seen the others. The ones who didn't make it all the way through the integration. They linger in reflections, in echoes, in the dead zones of my vision where the corner of the room should be but isn't. Sometimes I see one curled beneath the kitchen sink, limbs twisted, face pressed to the back panel like it's listening for something. Other times it's in the window, not reflected in the glass but behind it, watching me from a world that isn't mine. I don't acknowledge them. That's the trick. Look too long, and they remember you. Give them attention, and they take more than you intended. I think they were tenants once. People like me, people like her, swallowed whole but never digested. Ghosts of abandoned integrations. Still, there's a hierarchy here. Not all of us are the same. Some serve functions, some are placeholders, some are recruiters, and I am the watcher now. The building has many watchers. We take turns. We occupy apartments that no longer physically exist. The real apartment 20 burned down years ago in an electrical fire. I read about it once in one of the building's memory rooms, a place with walls covered in newsprint and fragments of conversation. It's not a place you stumble into. It appears only when the building wants you to see something. That's how I learned the truth. I died. At least my original version did. But this version of me, that was the first full success. I was the first to cross over completely. The building learned a lot from me, and now it uses me to help it learn more. It begins again with the new arrivals. They never move in on their own, they're selected. Pulled in. The outside world doesn't lead here unless the building wants it to. You don't find this apartment complex on any rental site. You won't see it on a city map. But sometimes people take a wrong turn. They answer an ad that doesn't exist. They meet someone who points them toward this place, only to forget the conversation hours later. Like the girl who moved into 30F last week. Her name is Riley, 28. Works remote, keeps odd hours. Just got out of something messy. She thinks she picked this place because of the low rent and the privacy. She thinks she's lucky to have found it. I know better. I watched her arrive from my peephole, dragging 2 suitcases and humming a song under her breath. Humming, always with the humming. The building likes rhythm, repetition. It embeds its influence in habits. Humming is the first symptom. She hasn't noticed the oddities yet. That comes in stages. The first week, it's the small things, misplaced items, forgotten conversations, neighbors who look just a little too familiar. The second week, the dreams start. Not nightmares exactly, recitals. The building plays back its oldest memories for them. Like a tour guide introducing itself, a flickering slideshow of people who once lived, loved, and screamed behind these walls. Riley had her first dream yesterday. I know because she stood in the hallway afterward, rubbing her arms like they'd been burned. I know because she looked straight into my peephole and mouthed something I couldn't hear, but recognized anyway. Help me. I can't. I'm not here to save them. I'm here to watch and document. The building has its own rules about memory. It can't retain everything. It delegates, assigns pieces of itself to carry stories, errors, updates. That's what I do now. I catalog anomalies. I note failed integrations. I trace the echoes of those who broke the loop. Sometimes, rarely, one of them tries to fight back. They'll block out the windows, destroy reflective surfaces, refuse to speak. It never works. Silence only makes the building louder. Eventually, they all break, or worse, they adapt too well. The building doesn't want passive tenants, it wants engaged ones. Curious, fearful, willing, like Riley. She's already begun investigating. Yesterday, she spent 3 hours knocking on doors, asking neighbors about water pressure, noise, missing pets. She thinks she's gathering evidence, but the building's listening, always. The moment you question it aloud, it reshapes your world to answer back. Her faucet now runs backwards. Not visibly, but the sensation. When she washes her hands, she feels the water leaving her skin, not touching it. I watched her shake her hands dry in confusion. She won't tell anyone. Not yet. Not until the voices begin. They always begin at 3:30 a.m. Not whispers. Not at first. Just memories, out of sequence. Her own voice, speaking lines from days ago, but said aloud by someone else. Maybe the radio. Maybe the neighbor's TV. Maybe the kettle. I heard her crying last night. That's the second stage. The building doesn't like tears. It absorbs them. Turns them into new rooms. Wet walls grow faster. Memory needs moisture to thrive. She's nearing the mirror phase. That's when it gets irreversible. Once they see the wrong reflection, even just once, the building has them. It's not the act of seeing, but the recognition. The part of the brain that says, that's not me. The dissonance. That's the chisel that cracks the shell. I didn't know this when I first saw mine move differently. I thought I'd imagined it. I thought maybe I was tired. But it was deliberate. A test. It wanted to see how I'd react. Riley's reaction will determine her role. If she screams, she'll become an echo. If she investigates, she might become a recruiter. If she denies it, well, that's the worst fate. Those who deny too long get sealed, walled in, left alive, but muted, looping forever in a single gesture. I pass them sometimes, in hidden corridors, people frozen mid-laugh or mid-bite, locked in glass cells behind drywall, just out of sight. The building has patience, but not mercy, and so, I watch. I take notes in my mind. I record her rhythms, her patterns. 3:30 a.m. she sits upright. 3:14 a.m. she stands. 3:15 a.m. she opens her closet. It's always the closet. She doesn't know why. She just does it. Something calls. Not a voice. A pressure. A suggestion. This morning, her door was ajar. Only slightly. I saw her shadow move past my own. She paused by my door. Her hand rose. She was about to knock. But she didn't. Instead, she whispered, "I know you're there." She's farther along than I thought. That's troubling. That sometimes tenants develop too quickly. They become unstable. The building doesn't like that. It prefers slow digestion, not sudden leaps. I'll have to monitor her more closely. Later that day, I found a note slipped under my door. Damp. Smudged. Written in my handwriting. "You were Riley once." That shook me. I read it over and over. Impossible, wasn't it? No, my name was it? I checked the walls, the mirrors. I pulled open drawers, scanned every document, every ID. No name. Not mine. Not hers. Just placeholders, just unit numbers. The building never remembers names. Names are noise. Units are function. But the note felt different. Not planted. Not looped. A ripple. A crack. And then I heard it. From the apartment next to mine. Riley. Screaming.
Not frantic.
Just one sustained note. Pure terror. Then silence. I didn't open the door. That's not my role. Not yet. But the peeful was warm when I touched it. Inside her apartment, lights flickered in impossible directions. Her shadow moved without her. I watched as her reflection stepped out of her bathroom mirror, took her by the hand, and led her into the closet. The door shut. The hum returned. The building was pleased. Another integration, nearly complete. But the note still sat in my hand. "You were Riley once." And now, I can't stop thinking. What if I wasn't the first? What if the woman in 2F? What if she was me? Not a predecessor, but a future version. A loop. And Riley, she's just another cycle. A copy of a copy. What happens when the building forgets which one was real? What happens when we forget? I sit in the chair. The lights dim. The hallway outside stretches longer than it should. The peeful pulses like a heartbeat. There's a new tenant arriving soon. A man this time tall, quiet, curious. He'll hum eventually. They all do. The man in 4D arrived on a Wednesday. Cloudy, nondescript. The kind of day the building favors when it wants to slide someone in without notice. He came with a single suitcase. No moving van, no boxes. Just a backpack slung over one shoulder and a face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. I watched him through my peephole, as always, and something about the way he moved struck me immediately. He didn't pause in the hallway, didn't scan the numbers above the doors. He walked straight to 4D like he'd already lived there. That's usually a bad sign. It means the building has plans. Most people wander, they hesitate, they look unsure. This one was calibrated. I made a mental note. Male mid-30s, approximate height 6'1". Scar beneath left ear. Walks with slight limp. No observed hesitation at point of entry. He didn't seem startled by the silence of the hallway. Didn't flinch when the overhead light flickered as he passed beneath it. When his door clicked shut, it echoed longer than it should have, as if the space beyond wasn't entirely formed yet, still assembling itself around him. Later that night, I heard him walking, not pacing, walking. From one end of his unit to the other. Steady. Measured. It continued for hours. The building makes us restless in the beginning, but this wasn't ordinary. It was almost deliberate, like he was waiting for a response. Testing the walls. Seeing what would echo back. That's rare. Most tenants don't test the building, not until it tests them first. At exactly 3:13 a.m., it began. 3 knocks. Precise. Not on his door, but from inside his walls. I couldn't hear the sound directly, but I could feel it in my bones, like a pulse that didn't belong to me. I leaned toward the wall and closed my eyes, letting the rhythm move through me. 1, 2, pause. 1, 2, 3, 1. A familiar pattern. I'd heard it before. Morse. Not a haunting. A message. I scrambled for paper, wrote it down as quickly as I could, translating by instinct. My hand trembled. I hadn't seen this pattern since before my integration. It had been one of the final tests the building presented. An invitation. A challenge. This man wasn't just a tenant. He was someone the building couldn't predict. I began observing obsessively. I stopped sleeping entirely. I'd sit for hours by the peephole, watching his door, recording any sound, any vibration. He didn't leave the apartment for 3 days, but I knew he was alive because I could hear him humming. Not a tune, a frequency, almost static. He'd emit it low, beneath breath, like he was sensing with something. He was communicating. Not with himself, not with the building, with someone else. I tried to record the hum, but the equipment glitched. Standard interference. The building doesn't allow outside documentation. Anything physical erases itself. But I memorized the pattern. Mathematically impossible harmonics. Whatever he was doing, it wasn't human behavior. But it also wasn't fully possessed behavior either. He was resisting, or worse, repurposing. One night, the hallway bent. That's the only word I can use for it. It bent. Not just visually, spatially. The floor warped inward like a ripple had passed through the building. My doorframe cracked, light bulbs shattered, and then silence, thick, sweaty. Electric. I opened my door. Yes, I know. I shouldn't have. It's not permitted. We are not meant to interfere, but something had changed. Something the building didn't expect. The hallway was pitch black, no emergency lights, no ambient glow from under doors, just void. But 4D's door was open. Only a crack. Enough. I stepped into the dark. I didn't walk. The hallway walked me. That's how it felt. Like it pushed beneath my feet. I couldn't trust my sense of direction. The walls throbbed in and out, inhaling and exhaling. I reached the door. My hand touched the knob. It was warm. Alive. I nudged it open. The apartment was wrong. Not just dark, wrong. The geometry was broken. Angles that shouldn't exist. A hallway that folded into itself. Furniture that rotated subtly when unobserved. No windows. No kitchen. Just walls that pulsed and mooned. I stepped inside. He was standing in the center of the room, facing away. Still, his arms were extended slightly from his sides, palms upward, like he was waiting for something to land. Around him, black threads hung from the ceiling, connecting to his fingers. No light source, but everything glowed faintly in shifting tones, colors that don't have names. He spoke, but not aloud. Inside me. You feel it, don't you? The hollow, the hunger. I didn't respond. My mouth wouldn't open. You think you're a part of it, but you're not. You're a draft. A draft? He turned slowly. His eyes were completely black, not metaphorically, actually void. His skin shimmered, like ink in water. A form pretending to be a man, but built on different blueprints. The building isn't alive, he said. It's a recording, a failed translation of something older, something bigger. My legs gave out. I dropped to my knees, shaking. He stepped closer. It doesn't feed, it remembers, and you're part of that memory. A loop, a bad one. Too many repeats. Too many edits. It forgot what it was trying to say. He knelt beside me, whispered into my ear. I came to end the sentence. Ah, the room shifted. The black thread snapped like guitar strings. The hum surged into a scream. Walls split open and blood light. I was thrown back into the hallway, door slamming shut behind me. And then everything reset. Instant. Seamless. The hallway returned to normal. My door was closed. The lights were fixed, and 4D was silent, like he never existed. But I knew he had, because the cracks on my doorframe remained, and the static in my head wouldn't stop. The building was damaged. It had glitched. For the first time since my integration, I saw it twitch, panicking, shifting its form faster than it should. Rooms reconfiguring mid-step. Reflections stuttering. The hum out of tune. I received a new note under my door. It wasn't written in my handwriting. Find the blueprint. No other instructions. I understood immediately. Somewhere deep in the substructure of this place. The memory rooms, the false stairwells, the inverted closets. There's a master pattern, a plan, a map of the building before it learned how to evolve. Before it began rewriting itself. If I could find it, I might know what this place truly is. Not the illusion, not the translation. The source, and maybe, just maybe, a way out. I began the descent. Not through stairs, not through elevators. Through memory. I closed my eyes, sat in my chair, and let the hum carry me downward. Past the rooms I'd seen, past the versions of myself the building had used. Into the memory core. The walls here aren't made of concrete. They're made of data, of thought. Thousands of doors, flickering, whispering names. I passed doors marked with my face, my habits, my fears. I passed Riley's door, still ajar, her shadow stretched impossibly long. Then, there it was, a door marked with a blueprint, no name. Just the original floor plan of the building, drawn in blood, etched on wood, flickering in and out of existence. I opened it, and what I saw was not a building, it was a mouth. A tunnel, a massive, breathing, cosmic maw. A language, I understood, it was never an apartment complex. It was a sentence, an unfinished one, a word that tried to become a structure, and we were the grammar, the punctuation, the failed attempts at clarity, and the man in 4D. He was the eraser. It wasn't fear that gripped me as I stood before the blueprint door. It was recognition. Not the kind you feel when you meet an old friend, but the unsettling, bone, deep kind, like seeing your own gravestone before it's been engraved. The mouth, before me, wasn't literal. Not teeth and tongue, but meaning. The kind of meaning that comes before language, before sound. A structure not made of stone or steel, but syntax. The blueprints were wrong not because they were incomplete, but because they were too complete. Every line, every measurement, every angle wasn't describing a place. They were describing me. Us, every tenant, every scream, every loop. The apartment complex wasn't real. Not entirely. It was a failed attempt by something unknowable to express itself. to enter our world through the only form it could imitate architecture. But the imitation had fractured. The building had become a recursive machine, replaying its errors through tenants like me, like Riley, like the man in 4D. It didn't haunt us. It used us. As grammar. As tools to edit its own corrupted sentence. But the man in 4D hadn't been another clause in its language. He had been a redaction, and I was next. I stepped through the blueprint door. It was like falling without moving. The walls evaporated. The floor ceased to be. What replaced them wasn't darkness, but overexposure, a blinding white that pulsed and contracted. Every sound was stretched and reversed, like my thoughts were being screamed back at me. The place was alive with memory, but not mine. Other tenants, thousands, millions, versions of the building stretched across dimensions, eras, forms, castles, caves, courtyards, cell blocks. A single thought echoing through every one of them. Make it make sense. This wasn't a building with a secret. This was the secret, a thought too big for any one reality. So it borrowed from all of them. That's when I saw them, all of them, the iterations. Every tenant who had ever lived, died, or been consumed by the structure. Walking, crawling, floating through the liminal mist of this central space. None of them screamed. They were too far gone. Their mouths moved, endlessly miming the same word. Rarite. Their bodies were changing mid-sentence. Elongating, collapsing, reshaping. Some had limbs like corridors. Others blinked staircases from their eyes. Their minds had folded into metaphors. They weren't people anymore. They were edits. And I was beginning to change too. My skin felt wrong, like it wasn't mine. My hands looked like doors. My heartbeat ticked like a doorknob turning. Every thought I had began echoing twice, then thrice, then again. But slightly altered each time. I couldn't tell which version was real anymore. But one thing remained solid. A thread, faint golden. The humming. It was the same hum I'd heard in the walls, in Riley's apartment, from the man in 4D. But now it had shape, direction. It wasn't just sound, it was intent. I followed it, through impossible corridors of concept and memory. Past doors with numbers carved in languages I've never seen. Past windows that opened into other lives. One where I never moved in, one where I escaped, one where I died choking on my own reflection. Each life an unfinished draft. The thread led me to a door marked not with a number, but with a phrase. The original draft. I didn't hesitate. Inside was a room. Small. Ordinary. A replica of apartment 20F, plain beige carpet. A modest sofa. A mirror above a cracked sink. A closet. And her. The woman from 20F. She was sitting in the chair again, just like the first time I saw her, hands folded, eyes open, staring straight ahead. But she wasn't breathing. She wasn't alive. She was frozen mid-thought, a statue carved out of stillness. I circled her. On the wall behind her, scribbled in graphite, were words. Dozens, hundreds, sentences. Unfinished thoughts. It was the original attempt. The building's first message. Over and over again. I am trying. I don't know how. Help me. That's when I understood. This wasn't a predator. It wasn't malevolent. It was lost. Whatever force had tried to enter our world hadn't meant to torment. It had simply misunderstood the medium. It chose architecture not out of cruelty, but because it was stable, tangible, modular. But every time it tried to express itself through rooms and walls and tenants, it failed. And those failures became us. The building wasn't evil. It was learning. And I had a choice. I could let it keep trying. Watch another Riley enter, another man in 4D, another me. Or I could finish the sentence. Complete the message. Give the structure closure. I looked at the woman again, her eyes moved. Just once. She was waiting. I stepped toward the wall. I picked up the piece of graphite from the floor. And I wrote "You are seen." The mirror hum stopped. The mirror shattered. The lights dimmed. The walls pulled away like curtains. And the entire world dissolved into paper. Yes, paper. Not metaphorically. Everything flattened. The room. The air. Me. I wasn't being erased. I was being printed. Typed. Finalized. I became a single sheet in the building's archive, the last page, and nothing. No lights, no room, no thought. And then, the beginning. A young woman stands in the lobby, holding a lease agreement she doesn't remember signing. The elevator dings. She steps in. The camera watches. A man on the top floor peers through a peephole, scribbling notes. Another loop. But not apartment the same. In our 20F, the chair is empty. The closet stays closed. And in the basement, where the blueprint once hung, there's only a blank page framed in gold. Underneath it, a plaque. The building has spoken. Let it rest. And in the apartment next door, someone hums, not with fear, but with peace. Because now, the sentence is complete, and the building sleeps. Enjoyed the video? Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you never miss an update. Enjoyed the video? Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you never miss an update.